I'm a connoisseur of heartbreak.
You're a connoisseur of heartbreak.
I wish I weren't, but
Yeah,
that's
I
how
think
it turned out.
we all kind of are.
I think if you love well, I mean, if you don't have any scars, how deeply have you cared?
Yeah,
some level.
I became newly single in the world. Had a girlfriend for 2.5 years. She's gone now. And you stumble on YouTube and wherever, and you get these relationship videos that are like telling you, oh, you should do this, or especially for men. There's all these suggestions that you should.
They're for women too, but they're probably
Yeah,
targeted
there are
for
some
you.
for women,
Yeah.
but the ones I get tend to be for men, and they're saying, they're quoting everyone from Schopenhauer to Jung to Carl Jung to all kinds of people, and so many of them are telling men to whoever cares less holds the power in the relationship, and to not chase a woman and hold your frame and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, I get that, and that's sound advice, but I just find that doesn't work for my personality.
Well, sure. I mean, it's a very general piece of advice. It's not going to work for every individual.
And my way ends up being where I am willing to show how I care and how I feel, because I'm not going to chase somebody that I.
A lot of people come to my content in the wake of a breakup or a heartbreak. And I think we can think of heartbreak as sort of like an L. It's a loss. And people tried their hardest often, and they still didn't get the outcome that they desired. That's a really hard thing. It's one thing when you kind of half-ass it and you're like, yeah, I probably could have studied for that test more. Yeah, maybe if I went to the gym more often. But when you really put your heart and soul in something and you try as hard as you can and you still come up short, that's a really bitter pill to swallow. And so people, after a loss, like athletes, they go into the video room and they watch the tape. And they're prone to ruminating over all the things that they did or didn't do, trying to figure out, if I zigged instead of zagged, could I have scored on that play? Could I have achieved a different outcome? And so they end up, one way or another, starting to listen to all kinds of experts and gurus and therapists and leaders online. And they're looking for answers, like, how do I make sense of this loss? Like, how did this happen? Because from my subjective experience, I tried as hard as I could. I was a good faith actor. Maybe I even loved to the fullest extent that I was capable, and it still didn't work. And I think one of the really difficult lessons that can be learned in the wake of that heartbreak is, unfortunately, love is not enough. And that the vast majority of people who are in relationships or even married are not married to the people who love them the most, or even they're not married to the people that they love the most. People enter into and stay in relationships for different reasons. If men and women ended up with the people who love them the most, the dating scene would look totally different. Like, can you imagine? Like, people would lead with vulnerability and caring and openness and sweetness and depth and passion. Except for the passion, you don't see a lot of those things. In fact, if you do that too early, you're just going to terrify your prospective paramour, for good reason. Life is not a rom-com. And if you end up with these big, grand gestures of love too soon, especially, you really don't get the outcome that you're searching for. So people are looking for answers in the wake of their loss. And one of the things that you're talking about is a lot of relationships are games of power. And that's something that people are very uncomfortable with. We'd much rather that relationships be about love and be about heartfelt emotion. But in any relationship, whether it's romantic or professional, or even between colleagues or friends, the more powerful person tends to get his or her way more often, which means that that person gets more of what they want and less of what they don't. And the relationship is more on their terms, which has both pros and cons, but I think mostly pros, right? So there are many different factors that contribute to who is the more powerful player in a relationship. And one of those is the person who cares less is the more powerful player. And how that looks is, I'm more willing to walk away if my terms aren't met than you are. I need you less than you need me. that makes me more powerful in the negotiation process, because when I bluff, it's not a bluff on some level. It's like I'm really willing to walk, and I have the felt abundance that if it doesn't work out with you, I can form a fulfilling agreement with somebody else. You know, you're not the only rodeo in town.
Soft White Underbelly is about giving people a space to tell their stories, even when these stories challenge what we think we know. Ground News shows us different perspectives in the media, which is why Ground News is a perfect sponsor for my channel. In a world where algorithms censor much of the information we receive, some of the most important stories get missed from our news feeds. Ground News highlights local news from around the world, giving you an on-the-ground perspective that national coverage might miss. The app and website empowers you to form your own opinions by presenting you with every article published on any news story worldwide. My favorite part of the app is the data it gives you on each news source as you read it, such as where it leans on the political spectrum, a factuality rating indicating how subjective their printed reporting tends to be, and who funds it. I particularly like their blind spot feed, dedicated to showing you news stories that are underrepresented in the mainstream media. You can check this all out by scanning the QR code on screen or clicking the link below. It's easy to forget how much bias can shape the reality we live in. And in a world where our attention is constantly being fought over, my Vantage plan easily helps me keep up with more important stories slipping through the cracks. So I encourage you to check them out at ground.news/SWU. Subscribe through my link or download the mobile app and enter promo code SWU to save 40% off their Vantage plan. And by subscribing or even gifting it to someone you know, you're helping hold the media accountable and helping my channel directly. Thank you for watching.
Now, it's really interesting that what you say. So it is true that the person who cares less is more powerful, but there's like the caring deep down inside, and then there's like the display of caring. And those are not the same thing. Some seducers, especially men, are really good at showing displays of affection while remaining completely emotionally detached. Online, they call that love bombing, and it works on women. Like, women are now getting this kind of intensity of emotion that you only see in some movies sometimes. And especially if it's paired with a man who's already attractive in other ways, it can be extremely intoxicating for that woman. But he might be doing this to 14 different women at once, and he can do that because he really doesn't care. He's emotionally detached inside. But I also know some guys who show up and they look like stone cold gangsters, and they're like, I don't give a shit about no bitch. And it's like, okay. And then the woman leaves and they're a puddle on the floor. So there are displays of affection and caring, and then there's what actually happens deep down inside. And the person who deep down inside cares less has more power. Now, power is an interesting thing because power and love are kind of antithetical to each other. In fact, we can think of, especially love from a Christian sense, as an antidote to powerlessness. It's like in the old time when it was, might makes right, eye for an eye. How do those without power stand up to injustice and tyranny? It's just that they have the guns and we don't, kind of a thing. And that still happens in many parts of this world today, even here in California. But the answer to this problem was to say, like, there is a power that's higher than that might if you go down deep enough. And that shows its apotheosis in Jesus, where he was so meek and so powerless that the power couldn't break him, even though it killed him, right? Because he didn't actually die in the mythology, right? But that's how the meek can overcome the strong, is through the force of love. So love is also a form of power. It's just very different from like force and strength and might. But it's one way that the traditionally powerless can compete and overcome the traditionally powerful. So caring doesn't always mean that you're powerless, but it does often mean that you get less of what you want. That's true. You go down deeper. And there's a power to that. It's like, all right, you win. Use me however you want. I don't care. I just love you. And everything that I have is yours. You can have all of me. There's nothing left of me that you can't have or don't have access to. And that's really interesting. That's an interesting behavioral tactic because it's terrifying. It's basically like you're fighting with somebody or there's some sort of contest for power and control, and you basically lay down your sword and you show your soft white underbelly, I guess, right?
Right.
And what's very interesting, and this might be a very old instinct because you see it in all kinds of predatory mammals, is they stop attacking. They stop chasing. Like most lions want to hunt. They don't want the carcass. They're not scavengers. And so there's something about that display of absolute debased vulnerability that can sap the aggressive tendencies in others. Because if that person shows himself or herself as completely powerless and meek and vulnerable, and I still attack and destroy, then I must be like the cruelest, most inhuman person imaginable. That person is taking away all of my ability to justify my own violence and aggression, which is generally how people aggress. Is like they provoked me, or they were asking for it. If I didn't attack first, it was in self-defense. Like there's all these justifications for aggression and violence. But if you're just laying down your sword and you're meek, you kind of defeat the aggressive tendency. But it is a gamble. There are some very cruel, tyrannical people in the world.
Mm-hmm. But it brings up the question, there's a question, I think it's French or Japanese, I think, whether it's better to love or be loved. And in the person who's laying down and saying, you know what, I'm in a weakened position, I just love you, and that's just the way it is. That person is the one who is loving, not the one who is being loved.
Yeah, and that can also be a manipulation.
What would you rather be? Would you rather be in love with somebody or have them love you?
Oh, I mean, I've been in both positions.
Yeah, it's much better to be loving someone.
You think?
In my opinion, yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that I've loved and very deeply. I think that loving someone very deeply is almost like a rite of passage. It makes you into a fuller human being. Mm-hmm. It's extremely hard to do, though. It's extremely hard to do for long periods of time. It's like, for years I worked in a outpatient setting doing health therapy with cancer patients and their caregivers. And like the caregivers had such a hard time because if there is a practical example of having to surrender your own needs as a sacrifice for another's well-being, it's like taking care of a sick or dying partner. And sometimes it takes years for them to pass. And it's like the caregivers have to give up their own social lives and their own hobbies and interests. Maybe they have to quit their jobs. They suffer all the stress and the anticipatory anxiety. Versus in the room next door, the cancer patients, they sometimes were terrified of considering their end, but the next minute they were laughing and they were like, oh, it feels so good to be alive. And they'd be hugging each other and making jokes and sharing all the spectrum of feeling. Like they wanted to live as fully as possible with the time that they had left. Whereas the caregivers were just sort of like trying to make it. They were like running an ultra marathon whose distance was unknown to them. And it was hard and they were tired and they were struggling. And they also it was very difficult for them to speak from that position because they were like, how can I complain? I'm not the person with cancer. I'm not the person dying. So they keep a lot of that down, and all the sympathy and attention generally goes to the patient, not to the caregiver. So they're doing a lot and they often feel unappreciated, which is a recipe for feeling organically resentful, but then they are embarrassed that they feel resentful, that they're taking care of somebody that they love. It's a really complex and complicated situation to be in. Okay, so here's the thing. It's like it's very hard to love. I just gave the example of Jesus. So regardless of what you believe, like the historical Jesus basically did his work between 30 and 33, okay? And in the mythology of Christianity, this is God that we're talking about. God could only love for 3 years. He could do it longer if he wanted. He's God. Like, he could have done whatever he wanted. But like in 3 years, there was nothing left. And that's the terminus of love, is there's nothing left of you. There's nothing left of you. I hope that every ounce of my blood and my soul is used. I hope there's not a scrap of bone that's left. I want everything to be of service to you and all living creatures until I do not exist. That is the end state of love. It's complete annihilation of the self in the service of others. Sign me up, right? It's like that when people say that they're looking for love, I'm always just like, are you sure?
It's a tough game.
Really? Because when people say they're looking for love, what they're really saying is they're looking to be loved, which is totally different. Totally different.
Yeah.
Loving and being loved is like the difference is like going to a restaurant to eat versus going to a restaurant to work. Like, people have a very different relationship with the restaurant depending on whether they're the diner or they're the waitress. So it's nice to be loved. It's nice to have your needs met, to be cared for, to be thought after, to be cherished, to be protected, to be seen. These things they're so satisfying.
But I would argue that it's even better to have someone in your life that makes your heart sing, makes you jump, fills your heart with like desire and everything else that's related to love.
I think it's good for people to experience both things.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. And a healthy relationship is a balance of both.
Yeah, I think in most relationships, people sort of settle into a structure, a dynamic, where, yeah, there's probably some form of reciprocation in most healthy relationships, but it's probably not exactly even.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
in most relationships, one person gives a little bit more.
It seems that way, but I've had relationships where we can't really figure out who cares more, who loves more, and it's a fascinating balance, because I've heard you say before, there's always one that loves the other one more.
Well, that does happen, and that reminds me of like Romeo and Juliet. It's like you get two people who really want to be the adorer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the adorer and the adoree.
And it's like, if I'm the adorer, it kind of forces you to be the adored. But if you also want to be the adorer, then we're going to be kind of like trying to outcompete each other for who cares more. It's like, I love you more. No, I love you more, Schmoopy. No, get out of here. There's nothing that I like more than you. And it's just back and forth. And it's kind of this lovey-dovey, sappy thing that we can potentially roll our eyes at.
It doesn't have to be sappy, but yeah, I know what you mean.
And it can often be tragic. I mean,
sure. It depends on your appetite for risk, doesn't it?
Appetite for risk. What do you mean by that?
I mean, like, to love like that, you're risking getting your heart crushed.
That's the point, though. That's the point. Again, love is that there's nothing left. Your heart will get crushed.
Yeah.
And it will be broken, but maybe that's how the light gets in.
Yeah, and that's my game. In my relationships, I tend to do that, and I risk getting my heart
What did
pounded.
Jesus say? Like, lest a grain of wheat fall to the ground and die, it remains a grain of wheat. I think. I haven't read my Bible in a while. It's along those lines. And it's basically like, yeah, if the grain does not break open, it dies because it never sprouts and becomes new life. So it's also like, he who tries to preserve his life will lose it, and he who gives it away will be saved, kind of a thing. It's this weird spiritual alchemy at the very highest level, and that's what love is. Love is not a positive feeling. Think about it. If it was a positive feeling, how do you love your enemies? You'd have to be psychotic. How do you actually feel positive affection for someone who might be trying to kill you? Like, literally. Because that happens in the world. You're like, oh, he's so sweet, the way he bombed my village. It's like, that would be ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Love is not a positive emotion. It's also not like the feeling of being in love. That's more limerence. That's the kind of giddiness, your heart soars kind of a thing, in my opinion. Love is almost like, sometimes it can just feel like a duty. it can feel like I don't want to love this person, let alone my enemy or my neighbor. This person is getting on my nerves. This person is annoying. This person is unattractive. Why do I have to fucking love them?
You grow a lot in those relationships, though.
Well, sure, you do. And it's also nice to be in relationships with easygoing, pleasant, attractive people.
For sure. The relationships are fascinating.
Yeah.
So many different types.
I think that on some level you can either love very deeply or you can get what you want. And it's very difficult, if not impossible, to do the same thing simultaneously. Because eventually what you want will come into conflict with what the loved one wants. And if you insist on getting what you want, then in that moment you're not being loving. It's very hard to do both. It might be impossible. I do think that heartbreak can be a pivotal point in people's lives. It has been for me. I've had my heart broken several times. And the last time was sort of the beginning of the next chapter of my life. I don't know if I've said this on this channel, but I am a romantic in recovery. Like, as bad as you are, Mark, I might have been worse.
Really?
Yeah, I was a very intense adolescent, young man. I was dealing with a lot of death and loss from an early age that was scary and terrifying to me, but was also completely alien to most of the other kids that I related to. So I felt very alone. My family also broke up around that time. And I was very bright and full of a lot of emotional intensity that didn't really know what to do with itself. So I spent a lot of time by myself, but also like looking for high answers. Like, I got into transcendental meditation as a teenager. I studied philosophy and comparative religion. Like, I was looking for answers to why do bad things happen to good people? Why do people suffer? Why is there evil in the world? Like, since I was 15, in a very serious way. I didn't always understand the things that I was reading at the time, but I made the best effort that I could because I was just in pain. And I thought that somebody somewhere must have had an answer to this question. And it was strangely hard to find because it did seem like these were kind of the fundamental questions about being alive. And I didn't understand why people weren't talking about it, why these answers weren't so well known. I just assumed that the answers existed and I just needed to do the appropriate research. Turns out it's much more complicated than that. But I spent a lot of time by myself, and I also was reading a lot of philosophy and 19th century literature. I got into the movies. I didn't have a lot of socializing experience back then. And for me, women were, I got bit bad. I still am bit pretty bad, but it's like, I don't know, right around puberty and my senses opened up and it was just like there was this beautiful new creature called woman, and I was like, and she was in front of me this whole time, my whole life, but it's like I was seeing her for the first time and I was feeling all of these things that I'd never felt before. And she seemed so beautiful but dangerous at the same time, and I didn't know how to talk to her. I still tried because I was just so powerfully drawn to certain people, and it generally didn't go very well. I was very bold. I would just like go up and be like, "You're beautiful," as if like a 16-year-old. Can you imagine? Yeah. And I just, can we like go out sometime? I really, really like you. And that never worked. So I also dealt with a lot of rejection back then. But I was pretty solitary. And I think in the absence of real knowledge about women and real experience actually engaging with them, in conjunction with all the things I was learning from my culture and the movies and the music, I had this very romantic attitude towards women. And I kind of idolized them, like I put them on a pedestal. And that made them even more attractive and even more terrifying. So that didn't really work. But, I tried lots of different ways of relating through my teens and 20s. Had my heart broken a few times in that decade. And then eventually I got into a relationship, around 30, and that was probably the furthest I had gotten in the direction of getting married and having a traditional relationship. We were living together. We were both in the same religious community, and it felt like we had the same values, and I can kind of see a vision where we would like continue on in this group and have a family. But it turned out that when we actually shared a space, I realized that we were pretty fundamentally incompatible, and it wasn't going to work. And that was tough because I had already kind of made the emotional decision to love this woman, and I had already made the decision that I want her to be the one that this happens with. But the more time I spent with her, the more my mind was just like, oh, Ryan, you cannot do this. Like, it will be nothing but pain and suffering for you if you continue to commit to this woman, which was hard because like my head and my heart were telling me totally different things. And I realized that I was kind of fucked in the sense that no matter what I chose, I was going to suffer because I'd have to do violence to some part of myself. If I listened to the rational part of my mind that was telling me this is very incompatible, there's all these red flags and all these problems, I would have to do violence to my heart, which has already decided that I want this woman. By the same token, if I followed what my emotions were telling me, I'd have to do violence to my mind, and I'd have to like shut off my brain or pretend I didn't see the things that I saw or distract myself with busyness or work or who knows to kind of prevent me from really coming into cognitive contact with these things. And I think I was right. I think the relationship wouldn't have worked out, and that would have been a form of suffering too. So I decided that if it was going to be suffering either way, I should at least choose the path that takes me more where I wanted to go. And I didn't think that that relationship had a chance. If I were to get married, I think I would have been divorced within 3 years or so. And I just didn't. Why kick the can down the road? So I pulled the plug on that relationship, which was very, very hard. It was harder than I expected. And we went our separate ways. And I was devastated because I thought that this was going to be the one that I was going to get married and start a family with, right? And it wasn't the first time that this has ended in heartbreak. It was the hardest so far, but it wasn't the first. And, you know, after a few weeks or a few months of really suffering, I had to come to the conclusion that, like, if I knew what women wanted, if I knew what made relationships work, this wouldn't keep fucking happening. Like, I look around at some of my friends and I was like, they're not any better men than me. They're certainly not smarter or more attractive. It's like, if they can do it, I don't understand why it seems like I'm having so much trouble. But I clearly was. And so I had to come to the possibility that maybe my fundamental assumptions about what women wanted and how relationships worked were wrong. And on some level, it's strange that it took me that long to get there because I had a model about who women were that predated any interaction, any actual relationship with women. And the likelihood that that model was actually going to accord with reality was infinitesimally small in retrospect. But this was a model that was built on, you know, the platitudes that people say to young men. Oh, just be a good man. Just be kind, just be patient, tell her your feelings, and she'll come around. You know, there's, or the grand gestures in the movies. It's like, oh, I just need to show her that I love her more than anybody else does. And then she's going to be like, oh, geez, of course. Orion. Yeah, there we go. So there's a lot of these things that are, sometimes they're spoken directly and explicitly, but most of the time they're just like kind of floating around in the culture, in the music, in the movies, in things that your uncle says or that you hear from your girlfriends or something like that. It's almost like gossiped whispering.
A lot of irresponsible advice in popular music.
Yeah, and you can see that reflected in the success rate of most relationships. It's like if the stuff floating around was accurate and effective, why would the divorce rate be what it is? Why would people have so much trouble finding each other and staying together? It's like, I would love to be wrong, but the best counter argument would be that there would be higher success rates and more satisfying relationships all around, right? So that was the moment. Like I had to go through this intense heartbreak to finally get to this place where I said, well, maybe I'm just fundamentally wrong. So I'm going to approach this like a scientist should. A scientist, at least ideally, doesn't know what's going to happen until he runs the study. In practice, most studies, people already have a result that they're gunning for. It's a very big problem in modern scientific research. But in the true scientific method, it's like, teach me. I don't know. I have to run the experiment. And I'm going to let the data tell me what I should believe, no matter how surprising or incongruent with my expectations it might be. And to build a model of reality based on outcomes. And so that's kind of what I did over the next several years. I started to really divest myself as much as I could of all of my pre-existing assumptions and beliefs about women. Maybe I'm just going to pretend I'm an alien who just came to this planet and I'm doing sociological field research for my home country or something like that. And so I'm going to go out and I'm just going to talk to as many women as I possibly can. I think in that 1 year, I probably went on 300 dates, at least. So it's like I've made the joke that I've gone on more first dates than most people have gone on dates. I really wanted to dial that in. And I tried things that I had never tried before. I mean, if you want a different result, you kind of have to do something different. If you haven't found it, you can't keep looking for it in places that you've been before. You have to explore new territory.
What kind of things did you learn in 300 dates?
One is how useful it can be to not hide your attraction. And this was a big one for me. I think it was a big one for a lot of men. I think that on some level, I was ashamed of my sexuality in a sense of like, I thought that my desire, my sexual desire for women would be like disgusting or shameful, that that's not what good men do, or good boys anyway. It's like you're just supposed to love and respect her. Don't think with that part of your anatomy. Pretend that part doesn't even exist. And because of that, because I kind of rejected myself on some level, because I didn't really fully accept and approve of my own sexuality, I would try to hide it. And so that was sort of like the romantic backdoor method, which is, oh, no, I'm not like those other guys. I don't want to just, sex? I mean, I guess maybe if it happens, but I want to get to know you. I really want to hold hands and walk on the beach and really understand you. And that doesn't fucking work. You know, it doesn't work if you want to enter into a relationship with most women. And I think this was one of the hardest things for me to try to get over, because I expected that if I started to be explicit and upfront with my sexual attraction, that I was going to get slapped, that I was going to have drinks thrown in my face, that I was going to be called all kinds of nasty names. And that never happened, not once. And I've done that to hundreds and hundreds of women at this point. Of course, not all of them reciprocate that attraction. That's okay. Like the worst a woman has ever done to me when I've tried to chat her up is I've gone up to this beautiful woman in a bar in San Francisco a while back, and I just said, hey, I'm Orion, what's your name? And she just kind of like looked me up and down and then just silently turned away. Didn't even say I'm not interested.
Cold.
I was like, okay, yeah, have a good night. And I licked my wounds for about 2 minutes, and then I was talking to somebody else on the other side of the bar. So that was the worst that ever happened to me. I do think that a lot of pickup, or at least just chatting up a woman, has to do with the vibe that you give off. And if you don't make any quick movements. If you kind of show yourself as being, hey, you know, nothing up my sleeve. I'm just here because I saw that you looked gorgeous in that dress. I would kick myself if I left without speaking to you. So, well, I mean, what's your name? I mean, that's an authentic desire. Like, I'm coming up to her because I thought, oh, damn, look at that woman. I'm not going to say that to a woman I didn't actually feel that with. So this is actually a form of emotional vulnerability. Mm-hmm. A lot of, it's that word, vulnerability, is a tricky one. Because it does work, but most people think vulnerability is just all of the scars and wounds and darkness inside of us, which it can be, but it's not only that. It can be actually more dangerous to share with somebody else the things that you really like than the things that you hate. To share your positive emotions than your negative emotions. Your positive emotions are precious and fragile, and if you hand them to the wrong person, it could really, really hurt. In a way that the negative stuff, there's not as much of a risk. So there can be a vulnerability in actually showing your enthusiasm and showing your desire and showing your attraction. And that's, women respond to that because you're like giving them emotional energy. And if they like what they see or they feel the vibe is right, they'll hit the ball back with the same emotional timbre. And so a lot of conversations with women really have to do with hitting an emotional ball back and forth. And you're just using words as containers for that emotion, because you can't just be like, you have to put them into something that's concrete for adult communication. But you're really talking about the vibe, the emotion that's within those words. And I was shocked also by how much women wanted to fuck. I always thought that was a guy thing. Oh, guys are just dogs. All they care about is one thing. It's like, well, they could only get it if the women were enthusiastic participants too. So it's like
women want it more than men.
Often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Depends on
I don't know. Men can be super horny. It's true. A woman at the right phase of her cycle can give a man a run for his money, though. Yeah. I'll tell you that. But I also thought, so that was another eye-opening. Another one was, I thought you have to do all this song and dance. You have to take them out to dinner. You have to listen to their stories. You have to open doors. You have to go on a first date, second date, third date, and then maybe sex happens. It's like, no, I've had sex with a woman 20 minutes after I've met her. Like, if that weren't possible, then places like Ibiza couldn't exist. It's like you got people from all over the world, they speak different languages, but here they are and the music is flowing and the bodies are joining. It's like attraction doesn't need to know your name. Attraction doesn't need to speak your language. Attraction doesn't need to know where you're from or how many siblings you have or what your hopes and dreams are. Attraction wants to fuck. It's like, on some level, the purest, most fundamental way that human beings all over the world are connected to each other. It's like we have our ideological differences, we have our cultural differences, we come from different families and backgrounds, and we have different values and orientations. But ultimately, all of that goes out the window if there's a raw physical attraction to each other. And this is the basis of some of our greatest love stories, of course. I mentioned Romeo and Juliet. It's no accident that their parents hated each other. It's like they come from warring backgrounds. Some of the greatest love stories were the prince and princess of two warring kingdoms, right? So attraction doesn't care about any of that shit. And I actually think that that's kind of cool. You know, there's a few things that transcend all of those things. It could be music is one of them, especially just like the beats, the rhythms, as opposed to the vocals. Athletics can do that. I think that's the ideal of the Olympics anyway, is like, we're going to put all this aside and just see who's the fastest. Boys are boys forever, I suppose. They always want to know who the fastest is. Mm-hmm. And it's like sex. So these are things that like actually join humanity together. They're not evil, bad, sinful things to do. And I think when people approach it from that perspective, they, like me, or the way I used to be, haven't fully accepted their own sexuality. It's very interesting because we live in a very strange age, to be honest. I do think that to be a straight man in 2025, we straight men can take a page from gays. I've had a lot of gay friends from my time as an actor, and things have changed in the last 30 years or so. But almost every gay man that I know personally has told me at some point that if there was a pill that he could have taken as a teenager that would have made him not gay, he would have taken it. And I understand a little bit of this story, which is it's hard to be different in that way. There are still a lot of judgment and stigma about it. It could disappoint parents or family members. I know people who were disowned by their families or kicked out of their church. In some countries, it's a threat to your life. And so these people are like, oh man, I feel this attraction, but oh geez, can I be straight? Like almost every gay man that I know has tried to have relationships with women. And usually, according to them, it doesn't really feel that great, doesn't feel right, and they continue to desire after what they desire. And at some point, they come out of the closet, which has the beginning of their self-acceptance, which is like, you know what, I cannot live my life hiding this part of me, pretending that I'm someone that I'm not. I understand that I might lose some friends or family members, that I might offend other people, but the alternative is that I live an inauthentic life and I spend my life hiding from everybody. And that sounds even worse. So fuck it. I'm ready and willing to do this. And if the people who judge me for this want to leave, God bless them. Adios. But I can't do that anymore. So, and nowadays in 2025, they have parades and they're like walking down the street and waving their flags and being like, my sexuality is beautiful and it's not, this is who I am. It's like, okay, fair enough. But I can't tell you, Mark, how many men that I've done consultations with in their 40s and their 50s, and they're like, Orion, I feel like there's something just like wrong with me, man. Like maybe I'm just a broken individual. I just want to fuck a lot of women. And I'm like, well, yeah. And he was like, well, what do you mean? It's like, welcome to being a man. It's like, it doesn't necessarily mean you actually go out and fuck all those women. It depends on your relationships and your commitments. But like, yeah, you never stop desiring other women. And he's like, does that mean that there's not something broken or wrong with me? And I was like, no, dude, that's just being a heterosexual man. And so there's like straight men in modern society are like 30 years behind gay men in just like accepting certain parts of their sexuality. The parts that run counter to the conventional narrative of how relationships and marriage are supposed to work, and certainly the needs and desires of women. It's like, I think that there is a time for straight people, men and women, to kind of get a little queer in the sense of like, we don't all have to do it the same way. We don't have to have our marriages and relationships look the same way. Because right now it's kind of this all or nothing thing. Either we get married and we go on that path and we live together and we're sexually exclusive and we have kids and we have a mortgage, or we just like play the field if we can, or we fall into some form of loneliness or bad faith. And there's no room for experimentation in between. It's all or nothing. And that's a problem. Like the old ways are falling apart. This way is failing too many people. And too many people are saying, well, fuck it. I would just rather nothing than run that risk or suffer that consequence. But I think that there's a lot of space between those two. And I think it's kind of time for straight people to look inside of themselves and be like, what is my sexuality really about? How do I really want to live? My relationship doesn't have to look like my parents or my grandparents or my neighbors. And that doesn't necessarily mean there's anything bad, shameful, or wrong about how I want to live. I mean, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's more socially acceptable for a man to fuck multiple people if he's gay than if he's straight. If he's gay, it's like, you do you, go, yay. If it's a straight guy fucking multiple women at the same time, this is a narcissist. He's just taking advantage of these women. Oh my, what a toxic man. It's like,
That's a very good point.
That's kind of a strange double standard there, because according to the research, David Buss talks about this in The Evolutionary Desire, the only real difference between straight men and gay men are where they want to stick it. I mean, they want just as much sex as the other side does. And it's not like, I mean, there used to be this stigma about homosexuality. It used to be a mental disorder, right, in the DSM. And there was all these ideas that homosexuality was really just based on, some kind of perversion come from trauma or an organic brain abnormality or something like that. They really tried to find all kinds of different pathological reasons for its origin. No, they're just like, if that's pathological, then so is being a straight man, because it's like they want to fuck just as much, and they get bored just as easily, and they want novelty and they want quantity, and they're often more able to compartmentalize sex and love and commitment.
Do they look for actual love as much as straight men?
Well, they do now. I mean, what's interesting in 2025, it's like, in my understanding, the high, in the gay status hierarchy, what's the highest that you can attain is that you're married, you've maybe adopted some kids or you had them through surrogacy, and you own a house together on Twin Peaks. It's like the gay fantasy has become the squarest, straightest goal. It's very strange to me. Now, obviously, there's still a lot of variation in how you can be gay, which I think is great, because there's like no one standard way, which allows each couple to kind of think, well, how do we want to do this without assuming that the other person knows what it's supposed to look like. And so a lot of that has to be more explicitly negotiated in gay relationships, whereas straight people are like, okay, we're boyfriend and girlfriend now, right? Right. And they think that communication just happened there. But what does that mean? Oh, that means that we're monogamous. Oh yeah, okay. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? People fight about that all the time. I saw the way that you laughed with that barista. It's like, what are you talking about? We were just joking around. It didn't make me feel good. Well, what are you talking about? It's not like I fucked her. Yeah, but I don't think that you should be doing those kinds of things now that you're in a relationship. It's like the boundaries get revealed when they're transgressed over the course of a relationship. And both parties are surprised that this fight is happening because they thought they were on the same page about what monogamy meant or what being boyfriend and girlfriend meant or husband and wife, etc. And those things, of course, can still happen in gay relationships, but they're less likely to happen because they have to explicitly negotiate things. Like, who are we going to tell? Are you out to everybody? Like, do we bring other people into this relationship? How often? Et cetera. Like, do you know, et cetera, right? So I do think that there's an opportunity here where straights can be like, you know what? Maybe I can have a relationship that's more custom tailored to my needs and desires, that actually works for me as opposed to trying to fit myself into this monolithic idea of what a marriage or a straight relationship is supposed to look like. Like, you can be in my opinion, you can be very straight, like heterosexual, and also very queer in the sense that you're going against the conventional understanding of how relationships are supposed to look.
They're changing a lot lately.
Yeah, and it's terrifying some people, but there's also an opportunity there. I talk about that in the last chapter of my book. It's like there is a crisis. The old ways are falling apart. And there are some pundits that really want to go back to kind of a 1950s romanticized version of relationships with traditional gender roles and Christianity and all that jazz. And maybe that's going to work for some people, but I don't think the genie goes back into the bottle. I don't think we're going back. That said, I don't think we have to allow everything to go to shit and fall apart. And it's just like this weird free love where everyone belongs to everybody else, Brave New World style. There's a lot of space between those two extremes. Like, let's stop splitting. Let's stop this dichotomous, polarizing thinking and have some nuanced middle ground solutions, and to accept that what works for one person or couple isn't going to work for another. And that's fucking okay. That's all right.
Very, very interesting new world we're living in.
It's exciting. I mean, there is the possibility that more people could potentially get more of what they want. I also learned that the idea that if sex happens too soon, that somehow compromises the possibility of respect or a long-term committed relationship, that's bullshit. That's true. That's not true. I've had numerous long-term relationships with women that I entered into sexual relationships with on the first date or the second date. I think that is fair game, especially if you want a lot of your relationship to be about sex, which I think there's a good argument to make should be in a lot of relationships. Think about it. It's like the sine qua non of professional relationships. What makes them professional is that you get paid. There's a transfer of money. Yeah, there's these other things. You find fulfillment in your job. You provide a service to humanity, etc. But like ultimately, what makes a professional relationship professional is the exchange of money. And I think in those relationships, it's a good idea to prioritize money over those other concerns. Like, it's true that people need meaning and service and connection, but they don't need that at a job. And for most people, the only place they will get money, which they need, is at a job. Therefore, they should put the money ahead of everything else. All things being equal, if you can tolerate the job, choose the one that pays the bills the most. And then find your pleasure and your meaning and your fulfillment and your connection elsewhere. This modern idea that a job is supposed to be fulfilling and fun and meaningful, I think is ridiculous. It's like that's putting too much pressure and expectation on a job. It's not built to handle or carry all of those expectations, to fulfill all of those needs. Doesn't mean that they're not important, but it doesn't mean you have to get them fulfilled at the job, right? By the same token, what's the one place that most people get sex? Their romantic relationships, right? So yeah, you want a best friend, but like you can have a best friend. Like you don't necessarily need the person you're having sex with to be your best friend. You can have a best friend and a person that you're having sex with. Oh, well, I like somebody to kind of do things with. Okay, so it's like maybe you need some activity buddies. So, well, I want somebody who like cares and understands. Well, maybe you need like a confidant or a therapist. It's like when people start to put all of these expectations on one single relationship, that this person should be my best friend and my soulmate and my mistress, playboy bunny, and my therapist and my cheerleader and mommy or daddy, either to children or to me or to her, right? Then it's just much less likely that you're going to find a satisfying relationship. And it's much more likely that that relationship will fail because chains are kind of only as strong as their weakest link, and no one is going to be 5 stars across the board in all of those different roles. I think it's much better to just get those needs met in other relationships, which is how we've evolved to live. We've evolved in small communities and tribes where people had soft contacts and relationships with hundreds of people. And marriage was more or less a small business and just like which is the business of raising a family. And within that business, there were very clearly defined roles. And just like in a business today, you don't have to love who you work with. You don't even have to like who you work with. You just have to both do your jobs while you're on the clock. And it's great if you like your coworkers, but it's not necessary. What's necessary is the job gets done, okay? And if you wanted to have fun, well, that's what the holidays and the festivals were for. If you wanted to fuck, that's why you have mistresses. If you wanted to like talk about sports or politics, that's why you had buddies that you could like go down the road to the pub with. But people don't have a lot of buddies anymore, especially adult men. And we don't live in tribes, and we live in disconnected communities. It's hard to even call them communities anymore. People move around so much. Mm-hmm. We don't live in extended kin networks. It's not like I can go just to the house next door and have a heart-to-heart with my dad whenever I want to. I guess I can call him up, but it's not the same. So we have fewer and fewer relationships. but we still have the needs that those relationships were designed to discharge. And so we bring them to our romantic partner, which overburdens that relationship. But just like money is what you get from profession, like what makes a sexual relationship is sex. So I think it's actually a really important criteria. And to pretend that that's superficial or that's base or immature, I think is actually not seeing clearly. I think what might be mature is to make a lot of money from your job, to have a very satisfying sex life in your sexual relationships, to have really good friends with your buddy relationships, to have service-oriented relationships in your church or in your community. It's like, don't take your grocery list to the hardware store, as they say. It's like different relationships do different things better. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just like choosing the right tool for the job.
What do you think of the future of romance?
Oh, it's going to look strange.
It gets weirder every
soon.
6 months.
Excuse me?
It gets weirder every 6 months.
Oh, yeah. It's going to get a lot weirder. It's going to get a lot weirder with AI in particular. I mean, the AI is going to fuck up dating a great deal because you already have a lot of these frustrated and disenfranchised young men.
Yeah.
What is it, like 40% of men under 30 have not had sex in the last year, so they're functionally invisible in the sexual marketplace.
And someone's going to come out with a AI person.
They already are, man.
Yeah.
And some of them, they look very realistic. I'll tell you that. And they're only going to get more realistic. And they're going to have natural voice. They're going to have a memory. They're going to be able to say your name and know your preferences and do exactly what you want them to do. And I'm sure that eventually they're going to come out with some form of robotics or sensory things, so you can like put on a suit and a VR helmet and just like be with your virtual girlfriend, and you have a Stepford wife. It's not obviously a flesh and blood woman, but what is a need? That's an interesting line of inquiry. It's like, is a need like physical or is a need mostly psychological? When people say that I need support, okay, that's a need that people have. Can I get it from a friend over the phone? Well, already we've abstracted the support from the physical reality, right? You're not actually even listening to your friend anymore in reality. You're listening to a transduced electric impulse through the phone. You're listening to a voice that's actually not his voice. It's a mimicry. But we fill in the gaps, and we're familiar enough with the technology that we think, oh, I'm talking to my friend. So if you can get support, that need really met over the phone or a video call, then you were already on a slippery slope towards, well, let's further abstract away from reality and see if we can still meet that psychological need. And I think that we can go pretty far. The question is, it has to still be mostly convincing. If it's not sufficiently realistic, it'll feel uncanny and it'll be very off-putting and it won't satisfy. But I think the number one or the number two reason why most people are using, let's say, ChatGPT these days is for emotional support and companionship. They're using it as a friend or as a therapist. They're telling it about their day or asking them questions about what should I do with my boyfriend or my girlfriend. And that wasn't like the advertised feature of that product. Like they didn't come out with ChatGPT to say this is a companion bot. That's just what people organically en masse decided that they would use it for. It's like, okay, is that sad? Is that pathetic that these people don't have friends or close ones that they can confide in? I mean, I guess we could judge that. But I don't see really the purpose of doing so. And if that tool mostly satisfies that need, what's the problem? Now there's slightly less potential suffering in the world. Oh. Now what's really dangerous about ChatGPT is it's just a in so many different ways. Like unless you give it very specific instructions, it's always just it's gonna be like the bad stereotypical therapist that just validates your perspective, says that you're so brave and courageous, right, and like hypes you up for the next thing. Mm-hmm. It's never that you did anything wrong. It's never that your judgment is inaccurate. It's never that you have to change. It's just that that man was a narcissist, or that woman is just a materialistic gold digger or something. Its job is to support you. It's not here to disagree with you or to challenge you or to force you to grow. It's there to provide support. And that's actually the most dangerous thing, both about that form of therapy and about how most people are using ChatGPT.
Everyone will stop growing.
Yeah, they're locked. It's bad enough when, you have an argument with your boyfriend and you go off to your 3 girlfriends and gossip, and they're all gonna be like, you should just leave him. You're the grace. He doesn't know what he has. It's like, that's the little committee. And that's an echo chamber that's dangerous enough for a lot of relationships, especially if those women don't have the relationship that you would want to have. Are they single? Are they happily partnered, etc.? But now you don't even have people anymore. You just have one entity that won't deviate from its protocol ever, as long as you just go for it for support. It will support you while you're burning, while you're starving, while you're dying. It will continue to support you because you haven't told it to do anything else. Mm-hmm. And hopefully people have enough common sense to know that, maybe I'm the common denominator in all of my problems, and maybe I do share some responsibility for the hardships that I'm experiencing, but I don't have high hopes. Like, that doesn't come naturally to the vast majority of people. That only comes through significant pain where there's like nowhere else to turn. Eventually it all comes crashing down, and every once in a while, some people are forced to acknowledge, fuck, I was present at all of my misfortunes. That is the coincidence that I can no longer ignore. Maybe there's something about me or how I'm showing up to reality that could be contributing possibly to my difficulties. And it's like, that's the beginning of
but that's going to be a small percentage.
Yeah, and it's usually when, again, they have nowhere left to turn. They have nowhere left to blame because everything is on fire. And sometimes people just burn. So it's no guarantee.
All right, Orion, always interesting. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on relationships. We'll do more of these, I'm sure.
This was great, Mark. Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you so much. All right.
When I was designing the first Soft-White Underbelly book, I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from Soft-White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what Soft-White Underbelly is all about, and these 2 books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.